You have spent years giving healing and bending yourself into shapes that others could carry. You've walked through the fire of someone's absence, someone who loved freedom more than connection, someone who avoided what you brought in abundance, your heart, your empathy, your sacred care. And now you stand at a crossroads, trembling but alive, facing the truth that your throne was never theirs to take. It was yours all along, hidden beneath layers of misplaced devotion, waiting for your courage to reclaim it. First, acknowledge the pain, sit with it, breathe it in, but do not let it define you. Pain is not punishment. It is a doorway. It is the universe whispering that your heart has been overextended, that your soul is ready for a transformation. Leaving someone who could not meet you is not failure. It is a sacred act of liberation. You are stepping out of a shadow and into the light of your own divinity. And that light has been burning quietly, persistently, beneath the weight of another's avoidance, waiting for you to remember that your worth was never negotiable. Understand the cycles you were caught in, the pattern of overgiving, the constant vigilance for the flicker of their attention, the silent prayers that they would see you. These were not weaknesses. They were signs that your heart is too powerful for compromise. But the same power that made you vulnerable is the power that will now make you sovereign. The first step in reclaiming your throne is to break these cycles intentionally. Observe your past patterns without judgment. See the threads of codependency and cut them with reverence for your own life. You are not just healing, you are rewriting your story. Rediscover yourself. There was a version of you that thrived before avoidance entered your life. Curious, radiant, untethered. That version still exists. Reconnect with your passions, your dreams, your sacred values. What lights you up when the world falls silent? What stirs your spirit when no one is watching? Your authentic self was never lost. It was paused, waiting for the moment when you could honor it without compromise. This is your reclamation. This is where self-love becomes a living, breathing entity within you, guiding your every step. Now, learn emotional alchemy. The hurt you feel, the resentment, the confusion, the longing is not waste. It is raw material for transformation. Turn the sharp edges of your pain into tools of wisdom. Convert the tears into clarity, the anger into fuel, and the heartbreak into insight. You are no longer at the mercy of your sensitivity. You are mastering it. Your empathy, once scattered, now becomes a compass for discernment, a light that guides you to what truly nourishes your soul. Set boundaries, sacred and unyielding. Boundaries are not barriers to love. They are the gates to it. They are declarations that you will no longer dilute yourself, that your energy is a temple, not a playground for those unwilling to honor it. In the quiet discipline of these boundaries, you reclaim your power. The world will test them, but every time you uphold them, you declare to yourself and the universe, I am sovereign, I am worthy, I am free. Embrace silence. Retreat is not defeat. Reflection is not weakness. In the quiet moments alone, you meet the part of yourself that has been waiting to speak. The silence teaches you patience, reveals the patterns that clouded your judgment, and strengthens the core of who you are. In this sacred space, your mind clears, your heart steadies, and your spirit rises. The avoidant may have feared intimacy, but you now embrace the depth of your own being, and in that you are untouchable. And finally, ascend. Step fully into your throne. Walk with the dignity of someone who has been tested and emerged radiant. Your purpose is no longer a whisper. It is a roar. Your presence is magnetic, your energy undeniable. You do not chase what is not meant for you. You allow life to flow to your alignment. You are no longer a caregiver to the unready. You are a queen, a king, a sovereign being whose power is grounded in self-love, clarity, and divine grace. The world will notice and the right souls will come, drawn to the authenticity and strength you now radiate. Reclaiming your throne is not about vengeance, it is about emergence. It is about emergence. It is not about proving them wrong. It is about proving to yourself that you were never lost. You have stepped from the shadows of avoidance into the brilliance of your own light. Every lesson, every tear, every moment of doubt has forged you into someone unshakable. You are a super empath, not broken, but awakened. Your silence, your clarity, and your unwavering self-respect are now your greatest strengths. Stand tall, rise, own the throne that has always been yours. Pain has a way of announcing itself like a storm on the horizon. It arrives with a weight that feels impossible to bear, a heaviness that sinks into your chest. And yet, it is also a message, a signal that something within you has been triggered, awakened, or perhaps overlooked for far too long. The first step in reclaiming your power after leaving an avoidant is to acknowledge this pain fully, without shame or self-reproach. Many empaths carry a tendency to internalize hurt, believing that the discomfort of heartbreak is a reflection of their inadequacy, of something fundamentally wrong within them. But the truth is far more profound. The pain is not a verdict on your worth. It is an invitation to deeper self-awareness. It is the universe speaking directly to the essence of your being, urging you to see beyond the surface of loss and into the deeper currents of personal transformation. Acknowledging pain does not mean wallowing in it. It means allowing yourself to feel it without judgment, to sit with the rawness of your emotions and honor them as valid and necessary. When an avoidant leaves, when they withdraw, when they fail to meet your emotional depth, the wound feels personal. You may wonder if you weren't enough, if your heart was too open, too generous, too sensitive. These thoughts are natural, yet they are also illusions. The avoidant's inability to connect is a reflection of their own limitations, not a reflection of your capacity to love. Understanding this distinction is crucial. Pain becomes a teacher rather than a trap when you see it as an external signal rather than an internal condemnation. To acknowledge your pain is also to give yourself permission to release the masks you have worn. Perhaps you've spent months or years performing emotional acrobatics, carefully calibrating your responses, suppressing your needs, or bending yourself to accommodate another's unpredictability. Leaving an avoidant shakes the foundation of these patterns. It forces you to confront the truth. You have invested deeply in someone who could not reciprocate fully. And while this realization can feel devastating, it is simultaneously liberating. The pain, when faced consciously, becomes a doorway to reclaiming your authentic self. It awakens your inner observer, the part of you that can watch emotions rise and fall without being swept away by them, the part of you that begins to recognize with quiet clarity that your worth has never been contingent upon someone else's presence or approval. Acknowledgement also requires gentleness. Many empaths, having carried the burden of another's avoidance, are prone to harsh self-criticism. They ask themselves why they didn't see it sooner, why they allowed themselves to be drawn into imbalance, why their hearts were so vulnerable. In truth, vulnerability is not a flaw. It is your greatest strength. Acknowledging pain with gentleness means treating yourself as you would a dear friend, with compassion, patience, and unwavering understanding. It is allowing your tears to flow freely, your anger to rise and dissipate, and your confusion to unravel without judgment. Each emotion is a step toward healing, a step toward reclaiming the sovereignty of your heart. Finally, acknowledging pain without losing yourself requires active presence. It is not a passive state of suffering. It is an engaged, conscious choice to confront, name, and integrate your emotions into your journey. You must witness your pain without letting it define you, to feel deeply without surrendering your identity to it. This is how you transform hurt into clarity, loss into self-realization, and heartbreak into the very foundation upon which your throne will be rebuilt. By embracing the fullness of your pain, you are not weakened, you are awakened. You are not diminished. You are stepping into a power that has always been yours, a power that will guide you toward freedom, self-love, and the unwavering recognition that your heart is sacred and unassailable. One of the most challenging truths for a super empath to face after leaving an avoidant is the realization that they have been caught in a cycle of emotional overinvestment, overgiving, and silent compromise. This cycle is not a reflection of weakness. It is a reflection of profound sensitivity and the natural desire to nurture, heal, and hold space for others. Yet, when paired with someone who avoids intimacy, this sacred capacity can be twisted into a pattern that drains, diminishes, and ultimately disempowers the empath. Breaking this cycle is not simply a matter of willpower. It is an act of conscious, deliberate awakening, a reclaiming of energy that has been scattered, and a recognition that your heart's generosity must never come at the cost of your own sovereignty. Codependency often masquerades as love. You may have told yourself that your constant patience, your endless understanding, and your ceaseless emotional labor were necessary to maintain the connection, believing that your devotion could fill the gaps left by the avoidant. In reality, this dynamic is a form of self-erasure. Each time you suppress your needs, ignore your instincts, or accommodate the unpredictability of someone else's avoidance, you trade pieces of your power for the illusion of harmony. Breaking this cycle begins with seeing it clearly, naming it honestly, and refusing to participate unconsciously any longer. Awareness is the first act of liberation. Once the patterns are recognized, the next step is reclaiming ownership of your energy. You must become vigilant about how your emotions are being spent, who receives your attention, and under what circumstances. The empath's natural inclination is to prioritize the feelings of others above their own, but this approach only reinforces imbalance. Reclaiming your energy does not mean withdrawing compassion or empathy. It means applying these gifts selectively, wisely, and in alignment with your own well-being. It is learning that love given without boundaries is not love. It is surrender to a pattern that depletes rather than nourishes. Another essential element is confronting the inner narrative that fuels codependency. Often, super empaths carry subtle beliefs that they must fix, rescue, or persistently accommodate in order to be worthy of love. These are echoes of past experiences, conditioned patterns, and unconscious agreements with the idea that their value is contingent upon how much they can give. Breaking the cycle requires rewriting this internal story. You must remind yourself daily, if necessary, that your worth is inherent, your love is abundant, and no one's inability to meet you diminishes your sacred capacity. In doing so, you reclaim not only your energy, but your self-respect and the quiet authority of knowing that you are enough exactly as you are. Practical action is crucial. Breaking emotional codependency is not a purely intellectual exercise, it is embodied. It may require stating your needs clearly, declining invitations or interactions that feel draining, and resisting the pull to over-explain, over-apologize, or over-accommodate. It may involve cultivating habits of self-reflection, journaling, and spiritual practice that reinforce your autonomy. Each conscious choice to honor your boundaries chips away at the cycle of codependency and builds a new foundation, one where your emotional generosity flows from abundance rather than obligation, from empowerment rather than desperation. Finally, understand that breaking this cycle is a gradual process, and it is also deeply liberating. Each step away from unconscious overgiving, each moment of self-honor strengthens the empath's connection to their authentic power. Over time, the old patterns lose their grip, and what once felt like a relentless pull toward imbalance transforms into a rhythm of conscious choice. The empath who once gave to fill emptiness now gives from fullness. The heart that once lost itself in another now beats with sovereign clarity. And in this reclamation, the super empath realizes that their true strength lies not in rescuing or repairing others, but in preserving, protecting, and celebrating the sacred power of their emotional spirit. After stepping away from an avoidant, a super empath often faces a quiet, disorienting emptiness. It is the absence of someone who once consumed so much attention and emotional energy. At first, this emptiness can feel like a void, as though the part of yourself that once existed in their presence has been lost. Yet, this space is not a loss. It is an invitation. It is an unclaimed territory of your soul waiting for your return. Rediscovering your authentic self begins here in the silence and stillness, where the echoes of conditioned patterns fade and your true essence begins to speak again. For so long, your identity may have been shaped by the dynamics of giving, adapting, and surviving in a relationship that demanded more than it returned. You may have muted your opinions, suppressed your desires, and ignored your instincts to maintain harmony or to earn acceptance. The avoidant withdrawal often led you to overcompensate, to stretch yourself thin, and to define your value by the presence or absence of their attention. Rediscovering yourself is about reclaiming what was temporarily overshadowed. It is the process of peeling back the layers of expectation, fear, and adaptation to reveal the vibrant, unconditioned self beneath. The first step in this rediscovery is introspection. Take the time to ask yourself the questions that truly matter. Who am I when no one is watching? What brings me joy that is independent of validation? What are the dreams I abandoned to maintain someone else's comfort? These questions are not trivial. They are sacred. They reconnect you to your inner compass, your authentic values, and your deepest desires. The answers are often buried under years of codependency, self-doubt, and accommodation, but they are always present, patiently waiting for recognition. Rediscovery also requires a reclamation of your passions. Those Smith, all sparks of interest, curiosity, and creativity that were set aside or minimized now deserve your attention. Whether it is art, writing, movement, nature, learning, or any pursuit that awakens your spirit, engaging with these passions is an act of sovereignty. Each time you dedicate time and energy to what genuinely excites you, you reinforce the truth that your life is meant to be lived on your terms. These passions become the scaffolding of your self-expression, a tangible reminder that your identity is expansive, multifaceted, and independent of anyone else's approval or availability. Self-love is the foundation upon which rediscovery rests. To reconnect with your authentic self, you must treat yourself as sacred. Honor your boundaries, speak kindly to your inner voice, and celebrate even the smallest victories of self-alignment. Understand that self-love is not indulgence or narcissism. It is the recognition that your heart, mind, and soul deserve nurturing just as much as you have offered to others. In this practice, you cultivate a magnetic inner presence, one that is steady, grounded, and resilient. The authentic self is not fragile. It is alive, aware, and unwavering in its right to exist fully. Rediscovery also involves forgiveness toward yourself and toward the past. Forgive yourself for the times you compromised, for the moments you doubted your intuition, and for the patience you extended to those who were incapable of reciprocation. Forgive the avoidant, not as an act of submission, but as an acknowledgement that their limitations are not your burden. Through forgiveness, you release residual energy that binds you to patterns of the past, creating space for the pure expression of your authentic self. Ultimately, rediscovering your authentic self is an ongoing journey. It is the act of continuously choosing alignment over approval, self-respect over fear, and freedom over attachment. Every decision, every conscious act of honoring your desires, values, and boundaries is a step toward sovereignty. With each step, you reclaim the essence of who you truly are, a super empath whose heart is powerful, whose presence is magnetic, and whose life is no longer dictated by the avoidance of another. In this rediscovery, you awaken to a self that is not only resilient, but radiant, ready to reclaim the throne that has always been yours. Emotions are powerful. They are not just feelings that rise and fall. They are energy, fuel, and guidance if we know how to use them. For the super empath, the aftermath of leaving an avoidant can stir a storm of emotions: grief, anger, confusion, frustration, and even self-doubt. At first, it may feel overwhelming, as though the waves of emotion threaten to pull you under. Yet within this turbulence lies a sacred opportunity, the ability to transform raw, unprocessed feelings into wisdom, strength, and clarity. This is emotional alchemy, the conscious, intentional art of converting pain into power, vulnerability into insight, and sensitivity into a superpower. The first step in emotional alchemy is acknowledgement. Many empaths, conditioned to absorb and process the emotions of others, often suppress their own feelings in an effort to stay strong or to maintain a sense of control. But suppression is not transformation, it is stagnation. To harness emotional alchemy, you must allow yourself to feel fully. Feel the hurt, the betrayal, the disappointment, and the longing without judgment. Each emotion carries a message, a piece of insight into your needs, boundaries, and desires. By sitting with these feelings, you give them legitimacy, and in doing so, you begin the process of transmutation. Next comes reflection. Alchemy requires discernment, the ability to observe without being consumed. Take the moments of anger and examine what they reveal. Perhaps frustration at being unseen, dismissed, or undervalued. Take the grief and trace its origins, perhaps attachment to an ideal or hope that never materialized. Each emotion becomes a teacher, and the more you study it, the more insight you gain into your own patterns, triggers, and strengths. Reflection transforms raw emotional energy into knowledge, and knowledge is power. It allows you to approach your inner world with clarity rather than chaos. The third stage is integration. Transformation is not simply about understanding your emotions intellectually. It is about allowing them to flow through you, informing your choices and reshaping your behavior. Emotional alchemy is expressed in how you respond, not just in how you feel. The hurt that once caused despair can now guide you to healthier relationships and clearer boundaries. The anger that once triggered conflict can now fuel assertive communication and self-respect. The sadness that once immobilized you can now deepen your empathy and strengthen your self-compassion. Integration turns emotional insight into lived wisdom. Gratitude and perspective are also essential elements of emotional alchemy. Even amidst pain, you can recognize what the experience has taught you. Perhaps it has revealed the depth of your own resilience, the courage inherent in your heart, or the clarity of what you truly deserve. Gratitude does not negate the pain. It elevates it, reframing it as a catalyst for growth rather than as a mark of loss. Perspective allows you to see the avoidant not as a villain, but as a participant in your evolution, someone whose limitations illuminated the strength and depth of your own spirit. Finally, emotional alchemy manifests as empowerment. The empath who once absorbed and reflected the turbulence of another now channels that same energy into creatio, growth, and self-actualization. Each emotion, once perceived as a burden, is transformed into a tool, a guide, and a source of magnetism. Sensitivity is no longer a liability, it becomes a superpower. Pain is no longer a chain, it becomes a catalyst. Heartbreak is no longer a wound, it becomes a bridge to clarity, self-respect, and spiritual growth. In this alchemical process, the empath rises from the ashes of avoidance with a strength and wisdom that cannot be taken or diminished. Through harnessing emotional alchemy, the super empath learns the divine truth. The very emotions that once threatened to overwhelm them are the same energies that, when mastered, allow them to reclaim their throne. Pain becomes power, sorrow becomes insight, and sensitivity becomes sovereignty. This is the transformation that elevates a super empath from reactive survivor to conscious, radiant, and unstoppable force. Boundaries are often misunderstood. Many see them as walls, as limitations, or as barriers to love. For a super empath who has been entangled with an avoidant, boundaries are nothing less than sacred declarations of self-respect. They are the invisible lines that define your energy, your time, and your heart. They are not born out of anger or rejection, but out of a profound recognition that your life, your emotions, and your presence are sacred, and that you will no longer allow them to be diluted, diminished, or consumed by those unwilling to meet you fully. Setting boundaries is the act of reclaiming your sovereignty. It is a divine practice of honoring the temple that is your body, mind, and spirit. The first step in setting boundaries is clarity. Before you can assert limits, you must know your limits. What feels draining? What triggers anxiety or fear? What compromises your values or diminishes your energy? These are not inconveniences to ignore. They are signals from your soul, guiding you toward what is acceptable and what is not. Reflection, journaling, and meditation are tools that help you identify these limits. The super empath who leaves an avoidant relationship learns to recognize that their discomfort is not a flaw or weakness, but a divine alert, a call to realign with their own worth and protect their heart. Boundaries require courage because they often go against old patterns. For years, you may have prioritized another's needs above your own, justified their avoidance, and softened your own truth to maintain harmony. As a result, asserting boundaries can feel foreign, uncomfortable, or even selfish. But this discomfort is a necessary part of growth. Every time you say no to what diminishes you, every time you step back from what drains your energy, you strengthen the foundation of your self-respect. Boundaries are not acts of defiance, they are acts of sacred self-preservation. Consistency is the next essential element. A boundary without enforcement is a suggestion, not a declaration. When you establish limits, you must hold them, even when faced with pushback, guilt, or attempts to manipulate your compliance. The avoidant will often test boundaries, whether consciously or unconsciously, because they are accustomed to receiving emotional labor without accountability. Standing firm is a radical act of self-sovereignty. It communicates clearly: your energy is yours, your presence is precious, and you will not allow it to be taken lightly. Each act of enforcement strengthens your inner authority and deepens your respect for yourself. Boundaries are also a form of love. Love for yourself and love for others. They create space for authentic interaction rather than coercion or compromise. When you communicate your limits, you are teaching others how to engage with you consciously and respectfully. This is not about control or punishing anyone. It is about cultivating relationships that honor reciprocity, integrity, and emotional health. Boundaries separate what belongs to you from what belongs to another, allowing both parties to interact from a place of clarity rather than confusion. Importantly, boundaries are dynamic. As you grow, as your understanding of self deepens, and as your emotional intelligence expands, your boundaries will evolve. They are living expressions of your spiritual and emotional journey. A super empath who has experienced avoidance will recognize that early boundaries may be small, cautious, or tentative. Over time, however, they become bold, confident, and unshakable, reflecting the power and wisdom gained through experience. In essence, setting divine boundaries is an act of reclaiming your throne. It is a statement that you are worthy of respect, care, and reciprocity. It is a refusal to sacrifice your peace, energy, or dignity for someone who cannot meet you fully. Each boundary is a brick in the foundation of your sovereignty, a declaration that your heart is not for anyone else's negotiation, and a testament to the divine wisdom that guides you toward relationships and experiences aligned with your highest good. Boundaries transform vulnerability into strength, sensitivity into discernment, and past compromise into empowered presence. Through them, the super empath rises, not just healed, but unshakable. After leaving an avoidant, the world can feel loud, chaotic, and overwhelming. Your mind races with questions, your heart aches with memories, and your spirit yearns for clarity. In these moments, silence is not an absence. It is a sanctuary. Embracing the power of silence is one of the most transformative acts a super empath can undertake. It is in silence that the echoes of the past fade, where emotional turbulence settles, and where the subtle voice of your authentic self begins to emerge. Reflection in this quiet space is not passive. It is an intentional act of listening, understanding, and realignment. Through it, the empath learns that stillness is not weakness. It is a divine tool for insight and restoration. Silence allows for perspective. When an avoidant leaves or withdraws, it is natural to feel confusion, doubt, and longing. The mind instinctively tries to fill the void, replaying interactions, analyzing behaviors, and questioning your own worth. Without intentional silence, these mental loops can become exhausting and self-destructive. By creating space for quiet reflection, you separate yourself from the incessant chatter of fear and attachment. You begin to observe your experiences objectively, recognizing patterns, triggers, and lessons that were previously hidden beneath emotional reactivity. In this observation, clarity arises naturally, and with clarity comes empowerment. Reflection in silence is also an act of self-reclamation. For years, the empath may have lost parts of themselves in the dynamics of avoidance, suppressing opinions, desires, and needs to maintain connection or to placate another. In quiet contemplation, these suppressed pieces begin to surface. You remember what brings you joy, what ignites your passion, and what aligns with your deepest values. Reflection is not just remembering, it is reintegration. It is the process of reuniting with the authentic self, of reclaiming the identity that was overshadowed by compromise and overgiving. Through this internal dialogue, the empath begins to reconnect with the parts of themselves that were always whole, always vibrant, and always deserving of respect and love. The power of silence also lies in its capacity to foster emotional alchemy. In the quiet, you can feel your emotions fully without distraction or interference. Anger, grief, and longing are no longer external forces that dictate your reactions. They become internal signals to study, understand, and transform. Each emotion becomes a guidepost rather than a burden. The empath learns to convert heartache into insight, confusion into clarity, and sensitivity into discernment. This is how pain is transformed into wisdom and vulnerability is transformed into strength. In silence, the super empath begins to see their experiences not as wounds, but as catalysts for growth and expansion. Furthermore, silence cultivates patience and trust. In a world accustomed to instant answers and constant engagement, the empath who retreats into quiet develops the capacity to wait, to listen, and to respond with measured intention rather than impulsive reaction. This patience is not passive waiting. It is an active alignment with divine timing. Reflection reveals that the answers are never outside of you. They have always been within, waiting for you to quiet the noise long enough to hear them. Finally, embracing silence and reflection restores sovereignty. In stepping away from the chaos of avoidance and the emotional demands of another, you create a sacred space where your presence, energy, and choices are fully yours. You learn that the absence of external validation does not diminish your value, and that your inner voice is the most reliable guide. In this reclaimed space, you become attuned to your own rhythm, grounded in your own power, and aligned with your purpose. The empath who once sought completeness externally now discovers it internally, and in this discovery, the foundation of their throne is solidified. Through silence and reflection, the super empath transforms from a reactive participant in someone else's avoidance to a conscious, radiant, and sovereign being. The quiet becomes a teacher, a healer, and a sanctuary. What once felt like emptiness now feels expansive, rich, and alive. In this sacred stillness, clarity replaces confusion, peace replaces anxiety, and the empath steps fully into the power and wisdom that has always been theirs. After leaving an avoidant and reclaiming your energy, boundaries, and authentic self, the final stage of transformation is ascension, stepping fully into your throne with purpose, presence, and unwavering self-sovereignty. This is the culmination of all the inner work you have done, the conscious integration of your pain, your insight, and your rediscovered power. To ascend is not simply to exist after heartbreak. It is to embody a new state of being. One where your life is guided by intention, your heart is anchored in self-respect, and your presence radiates confidence and clarity. It is the embodiment of a super empath who has not only survived avoidance, but has emerged radiant, grounded, and fully aligned with their highest purpose. Ascending begins with presence. Presence is more than being physically aware. It is the conscious alignment of mind, heart, and spirit in every interaction and choice. It is carrying yourself with the dignity of someone who has seen the depths of their own emotions and emerged stronger. When you are present, your energy is not scattered in worry, overgiving, or anticipation of another's approval. Your attention is focused, your awareness is sharp, and your energy is magnetic. People are drawn to this presence because it is authentic, unwavering, and powerful. It is the energy of someone who has reclaimed their throne and is no longer willing to settle for anything less than alignment with their true. One to pleasings use this ascension. Leaving an avoidant relationship frees up the emotional and mental energy that was once consumed by worry, codependency, and overcompensation. This energy is now available to be channeled into your passions, your goals, and your highest calling. Purpose is not a vague ambition. It is the clear knowing that your life has meaning, that your actions matter, and that your existence is an active contribution to your own growth and to the world around you. When your actions are aligned with purpose, every decision becomes intentional, every relationship becomes a selective, and every choice becomes a declaration of your sovereignty. Self-mastery is central to ascending into your throne. The super empath has learned to navigate emotions consciously, to establish boundaries without guilt, and to honor their authentic self without compromise. This mastery is not arrogance. It is quiet confidence rooted in the understanding that your worth is inherent and immutable. You no longer seek validation from those who are emotionally unavailable. You no longer negotiate for attention or affection that is inconsistent or conditional. Your internal compass guides your decisions, and your sense of self-worth protects your energy from being misused. In this mastery, you are untouchable by external chaos and resilient in the face of challenge. Another critical element of this ascension is discernment. The empath who has left an avoidant has gained clarity on what aligns with their values, what supports their growth, and what strengthens their emotional and spiritual integrity. This discernment allows you to engage with the world selectively, drawing toward you only what honors your heart and your purpose. People, opportunities, and experiences now flow to you with greater ease, because your energy no longer attracts misalignment. You are a magnet for what resonates with your truth, and a shield against what diminishes it. Gratitude and celebration amplify your presence. Recognize the courage it took to leave, the clarity you gained through reflection, and the resilience you cultivated in the process. Each step of this journey was a building block for your throne, and honoring your efforts reinforces the reality of your transformation. In celebrating yourself, you amplify your energy and solidify the internal sovereignty that makes your throne unassailable. Finally, ascending into your throne is a living expression of freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from overgiving, freedom from compromise that does not serve your soul. Freedom to love authentically, to act intentionally, and to live fully. You are no longer defined by the absence of someone else's presence. You are defined by the fullness of your own being. The throne you reclaim is not a seat of ego or domination. It is a manifestation of self-mastery, wisdom, and divine alignment. Here, the super empath steps into their power completely. Radiant, sovereign, and unstoppable. An embodiment of the truth that leaving what does not serve you is the greatest act of love for yourself. Thank you for trusting me with your journey. May your path be filled with clarity, strength, and self-love. Goodbye for now, and may your throne always shine brightly as you step into your true power.